Welcome to the Hot Seat, David Judge, and here we are at Season 2, Episode 5 of the Hot Seat, where we release a new episode every second Tuesday and talk to industry influencers that have worked hands-on on the real estate industry, and we find out where these influencers see current and future trends and what you can do about it to support and grow your business. Now today we're releasing an interview we recorded with Tanya Titman, who is the director of an accounting firm, Consolidate, which recently merged with BDO, where Tanya now is the head of strategic innovation for BDO in Australia, while still being the director of the firm Consolidate. Now, one of the main reasons I'm excited to interview Tanya is she comes from a business owner's background. So she actually has experience in operating businesses outside of the accounting space and uses accounting principles to grow those businesses. In other words, Tanya shares real-world knowledge. Okay, in our interview, we discuss why tough times are coming for the real estate industry due to a lack of understanding of the numbers of the business, how systematizing a business can have a huge impact on the value of a rent roll, how cloud has impacted the accounting industry and how that change will impact the real estate industry, and the steps a principal can take to start to understand the performance of a business and never be afraid to ask any stupid questions. Now, Tanya is one of the best accountants, and I've had a number of accountants over my time in business that I've ever met. And I know that her real-world advice has helped many within the real estate industry. We have a number of clients that also work with Consolidate. So, you know what? Make sure you listen through to this interview to the very, very end, and you'll get some incredibly valuable tidbits. Okay, anyway, that's it. Let's get into it and roll it. Hello, David here from the Hot Seat, powered by Affordable Staff, and I have with me
Eva Judge.
And also
Tanya Titman.
Excellent, Tanya. So Tanya, thank you very much for coming and talking to us today. And we're going to have a bit of a chat to you around where you think the real estate / property management industry is now, where you think it's going in the future, and just from your unique angle, because you come from a background in accounting, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's right. Yeah, so many years as an accountant, but probably in more recent times really take a stance in educating business owners. So we work with a lot of businesses to grow and sort of overcome and understand the financial basics, of running a business.
Yes. So let's get into it then. And can we start by telling me how you got into this industry?
How I got into this industry? Well, over 20 years ago, it actually started because my parents were in business, and and I wanted to help them to be able to understand their numbers. And back when I was at school, actually, seeing the stress that business owners can go through, that whole financial stress, I picked up a program which was MYOB and started sort of helping my parents do their books, and went on to study accounting, and ended up in public practice, so sort of supporting business owners.
Yeah, so you enjoy the industry then?
Yeah, I do. And I really, I think that accountants have quite a unique talent to be able to use numbers to sort of really help and transform businesses, but also people's lives. So I take the view that we have a really unique position that we can actually transform and help people and sort of take them away from that financial stress and sort of solve the business issues. So a combination of strategy, but also understanding that sort of key financial data that supports a business.
So if we then transition that across to the real estate industry, what do you see as being some of the challenges that people from your perspective are facing within the industry at the moment?
Yeah, look, I think that we're probably heading into some tough times in the real estate industry, and certainly that tends to be I guess what's being discussed at the moment. But often, the understanding the underlying financial basics around a business is something that I find real estate agents, they may be great at selling, or they may be great at running a property management business, but actually understanding the numbers tends to be something that you delegate to someone else.
That's right.
And I think when you get into a crisis or into a downturn in any sort of business cycle, then actually connecting with that and understanding and being able to use that to get your way out of it is so important.
I think one of the biggest challenges around that is because a lot of the real estate owners or principals of agencies were ex-salespeople, were ex-property managers, and they were great at what they did, and they still are, but they branched off, and now they're running their own agencies. And do they have the background knowledge? Not always.
No, and look, even for accountants, to be able to run an accounting practice, we have to do a course on, how to understand to run a business.
Yes.
But I don't think that happens in many other industries.
No, that's right.
Yeah, that's a key area that I see. We see so much opportunity because if they do choose to connect and to understand numbers, they can actually transform their business.
But this goes across all types of businesses. It's not
does.
just real estate agencies. It's literally from a fish and chip shop, I guess, to,
it is.
to a big agency itself.
And I think one of the other challenges as well within the real estate industry from a property management side, understanding that within property management, that's the asset of the business, because that's the thing that you can use to generate cash flow, and then you can use it as a saleable entity.
Yep.
The competitiveness within the industry and people that aren't differentiating themselves away from others within the industry, and that forcing it to become competitive around the percentage of fees that they're taking, etc.
And the value, and looking at how that register or rent roll is actually valued. There's a lot of pressure in terms of what you can get, and having systems and process in place and good sort of stability across the rent roll and actually the staff in the business will add to a better value in terms of what you can get for that investment, that asset. So, it's really important that people understand that they're building an asset. It's not just about running a business or, generating an income stream, and looking and doing the things that they need to do to be able to, build a strong business so they can get a good return at the end of it is critical.
So if we get down to more specifics then, so you're talking about building an asset. So you mentioned systematization of the business?
Yeah, and this is something I see quite poorly in real estate. In general, that the systems and the processes are something that, if they get those right, there's so much to be gained in terms of profitability, but also in terms of the ultimate value that they're going to get around, a property register. And it's something, again, because of their skill set, because often they've come from a sales background, and some of them are quite entrepreneurial. The detail is something that is not, doesn't light them up, and they don't tend to want to do. If
but
they've
what
got
salesperson or what outgoing person really has that attention to detail? It's not.
And it's why you have to build a great team around you. So, having the right people that actually have the skill set to have those systems and processes in place. But, it's very easy to come unstuck and to get out of control if you don't have great systems in place.
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, disruptors. And the term disruptors, who were we interviewing? Ray Ellis, who's the CEO of First National. He was saying that there's no such thing as disruption. Disruption is business. And I mean, when you look at the life cycle of our business, for example, and where we've gone, it's been about adapting. So with that in mind, what do you see in the next, let's say, 2 years as being some of the bigger disruptors within business in general, and then if you can, like targeting it down to the real estate industry?
Yeah, look, I think, and in my business, I've always sort of taken that view that change is a constant. We've just got to constantly evolve, and we're sort of in this state of continuous improvement all the time. I really like to take a view of, building your strategy around who your future client is. And if we look forward, say, 5 years, even in the real estate industry, who is likely to be, the future client? How are they, what services, how are they likely to transact? How do they want to be communicated with? All of those things start changing if you actually look ahead, in the next 5 years. So I think that's the opportunity, is to really sort of look forward and say, what might this be in 5 years' time? Because if you're planning and strategizing around a business as it exists now, then it's going to quickly get out of date, and you will miss those opportunities, and you will have disruptors that come in and, take the market. I mean, you look at what's happening online. There's so much now that, so much that people are buying online that you would think they would never have bought that. I mean, who would think you'd buy shoes online? Everyone used to think, I know. But people used to think that, no one would buy shoes online because you've got to try them on and they've got to feel right. But, now we're buying so much online. So you see the impact of what's happening in terms of, digital transformation. And I think, I also in the real estate industry, it's still very, very paper-based.
Yes.
It's one of those industries that yet hasn't evolved to the degree that many other industries have. We're still dealing with pen and paper and signing contracts, and I think that there's a whole lot of probably process and efficiency increases that we can get once that starts transforming as well.
I think there's really good changes happening at the moment there now, but you're right, it still hasn't fully happened for a great chunk of businesses, but I'm loving the fact that I can see a lot of businesses are moving to a paperless environment now, so definitely moving in that direction. But
yeah, and you mentioned that your first experience, I guess if you were to call it in accounting, was MYOB when you were younger.
Yes.
And that would have been what, software based?
That was yes, that's right. Yeah, that was in a. I'm not that old, but yes, that's true. But yeah, it was definitely, and that was when computers were, there was no internet. It was operated locally off a computer, and nothing like what we've got now in the speed of how we account for things, and platforms like Xero have just really opened up so many opportunities.
Yeah, and how has that changed? Because you've now gone realistically from a what would you call it, a physical environment to a cloud-based environment.
Yeah.
Within your industry, how has that changed the industry?
Yeah, things are happening much, much faster. And, the thing I love about it is we now have choice. And what probably Xero has brought to the table is you can choose the best software solutions for each function in your business, and you can get them all to talk to each other. So, we now have this greater choice, whereas before it was you had to choose a platform and you had to go with every single thing that platform offered you. And if it didn't have everything, if you maybe got 80%, you were kind of happy. Whereas now we can actually choose best of breed of everything. They all talk together. The automation is incredible. So, there's no need to have paper-based invoices. Everything can be electronic.
Yes.
The way that we the way that we actually use and look at our data is so much more sort of at your fingertips. It's not, you don't have to wait for an accountant to send you something at the end of the month to say this is how you went for the month. You're seeing this real time. So we're able to I think and that is a great opportunity in business. We're able to see the data real time. We're able to forecast much more easily, and we're able to actually act on that data faster.
Yes.
So we don't have this lag in terms of waiting and then trying to think about, well, what strategy do we need to implement to overcome this?
And do you think it's interesting, because we work together, we work with Consolidate, and it's fantastic. I think before we were working together and we started to really break down our business and start to systematize and gain real financial insights, I was scared about looking at the data in some ways, and talking to other business owners as well when it comes to their accountant. Sometimes a comment is made around the fear of actually seeing the figures.
Yeah.
Do you experience that as well?
We do, and when we're running our workshops and doing the education piece, it is, we see it. We see the full-on anxiety that business owners go through when they look at their numbers, when they, are actually confronted with having to look at them. It's really, and I think it's not a great thing. It's actually something that I'm quite critical of in our industry, that we haven't done well. I think as accountants, we've sort of been the keepers of the numbers, and we haven't empowered our clients, and we haven't actually explained to them so that they feel comfortable looking at their own information. And so, that's part of what really drives us to do a lot more in the space of financial education is to empower, the business owners.
Yes.
So they can make the decisions, they can see the impact of what they're doing, and they can be part of the conversation. I just think it's really important in this whole financial function. And when you're running a business, it's not a hand it over to someone else and now it's their responsibility. You have to take a very collaborative approach.
Yeah,
and understanding those numbers. I
Yes.
think that's one of the biggest challenges, really knowing where your business is at and where your business is going to be at in 6 months' time.
And not when it's too late.
Because ultimately, if it goes bad, whose fault is it? Is it your accountant's fault?
Absolutely.
Or is it yours?
It's your fault.
But it is, and at the end of the day, who's going to be left with all the bills and no cash flow to pay it?
That's right.
You're not going to turn up and say, well, I'm sorry, but the numbers were wrong and therefore now we're in this situation.
Well, now at Christmas time, I forgot there's no income for 3 weeks, and we still have to pay wages.
That's right. It ultimately, it just fascinates me how business owners do try to delegate that piece when it's such a critical piece of running a business. But also,
is it fear-based? Is it really because they are literally afraid of what they might discover, or is it potentially, or is it potentially fear-based because I don't understand my numbers and I'm too embarrassed to say I don't understand how to read a P&L?
I think it's primarily that. I think it's primarily I don't want to come across as though I don't know what I'm doing here. Yes. I'm really comfortable doing what I do well, and I'm just going to keep doing that, and someone else can look after this other piece.
Exactly.
But as a business owner, you have to take responsibility for that.
And I think going back to the property management, real estate sort of space.
Yes, because we're sort of going off track, aren't we?
We are a little bit.
But it's good. It's important.
No, but it's good. But I mean, I think there is such a high focus on the trust accounting, making sure that the balance sheets are, balanced literally when it comes to the income ins and outs.
They have a higher risk element when it comes to financial information. So, everything that we're talking about very much applies to that real estate, industry, because their risk profile is so much higher.
That's right.
If things go wrong, if they get it wrong, they have a lot more at
legal
risk.
Obligation,
Yes,
that's right. So, it is. And I see it so much in that industry that they do just delegate to someone else, and cash flow issues. There's so many implications of just sort of leaving it in someone else's hands.
That was my I guess point is there's such a high focus on that trust accounting, making sure that part balances, but how much focus is actually placed on the running of your own business and the future forecasting of your business? Is it there?
Yeah,
I don't know. From your perspective,
From my perspective, I see a high degree of people in this industry that are not really in control of that. I think that they might see or think that they are because someone in their business is looking after it, or they've got a bookkeeper that's looking after it, and they've put it in their hands. But I can also tell you several instances where they've done that and it's come back to bite them.
Yes.
I thought someone was under control, but actually when we've sat down and started unpacking what's really going on, they've just been so shocked to see how badly it's being managed.
Actually, it's interesting because I was at a partners conference just a couple of days ago, and there was a lot of trust accountants in the room, predominantly trust accountants, and some of them were saying that there are businesses who literally change software just to hide some of the errors, and it is a big challenge in the industry.
Should we be talking about this?
Probably not. I didn't say who or what.
No, that's right.
But no, I think
it's a really, and it's kind of unspoken. It doesn't get spoken a lot because
there's fear and embarrassment around it potentially as well. But I guess that brings me to my question. I'm sorry if I'm going off track, David.
Go.
But what advice would you say to somebody in the space of real estate or property management, a principal who's sort of there going, okay, I'm not quite sure. Like, what would you suggest from? What would be the next steps that they should consider when looking at the business from a numbers perspective, or to look,
Yeah, look, I think as absolutely, a priority, they've got to start engaging with looking at the numbers. So if they have someone in the business, I'm not saying they've got to get hands-on and do the numbers and do the bookkeeping themselves, but they certainly, they certainly need to know how to access their information. So, equally, I see a lot of, real estate principals who do not even know how to get into their accounting software. I think you've got to be empowered. So you've got to be able to at least go in, understand the numbers, know what you're looking for. Sometimes the information is confronting or confusing because it's not structured properly.
Yes.
So, I take a view that you've got to set up your financial information so that it's informative for you. And if you're working off a set of accounts which your accountant has prepared for tax purposes, that's informing an accountant for tax purposes.
I was going to say, that's actually a story.
It's not actually informing you as a business owner. So, you need to make sure that the information talks to you and tells you what you need to know. And do it in a collaborative way. So, don't sack the bookkeeper and sack the accountant and say, right, I'll do it all myself, but actually work with them and make sure you take time out to look at the numbers, every month, and ask the stupid questions because, I guarantee there's been so many people that have said, it's a stupid question, I didn't want to ask it. And it's actually a really valid question. If you don't understand everything that's in there, ultimately that's your information. You need to understand it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it was good, Eva, because that was actually bringing us back on track. That was the next question. That's basically this part of the interview. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and put Tanya on the hot seat and ask you a couple of questions so we can get a bit of insight into...
Before we do that, David.
Yes,
sorry.
Please.
Shameless plug.
No, we did that after that.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Okay, so we'll be back shortly. Okay, welcome back, Tanya.
Thank you.
Okay, so here we are at the 60-second hot seat where we're going to go through and ask you a series of questions. If you can answer with short and concise answers, if you can't think of an answer, then certainly pass and then we can come back to it. Or you can say, I don't want to answer that, sorry.
All right. See how we go.
Okay, you ready?
Yes, ready.
Ask. Yeah.
Yes, okay, number one bucket list item.
That would be... so many things that I'd like to do. Probably to live in Europe for about 6 months.
Awesome. The strangest thing you've ever eaten?
I don't eat too many strange things, but my husband eats plenty. Pass.
Describe yourself in 3 words.
Adventurous.
Except when it comes to food.
Except when it comes to food. That's right. Creative and fun.
Excellent. How do you spend the first 3 hours of your day?
We kick off most days with a walk, and at the moment it's in the dark, with our 2 dogs, and getting kids ready for school and organised, and enjoying a nice drive to work in my car on my own, listening to good music.
Fantastic. Favourite drink?
Water.
Would you prefer to be invisible or be able to fly?
Ooh, I think that fly.
A mistake that ended up being a success?
Oh, so many. Mistake that ended up being a succce. Gosh.
This is the hot seat.
The hot seat. I don't know. Yeah. Gosh. I think the way I used to recruit staff, I think the challenge turned into an opportunity to fix it in the business. Yep.
How much money is enough?
You're asking an accountant, couldn't
you?
Yeah, that's right. I have it down to 8 decimal points.
Yes, and I'm not a real detailed person, but how much money is enough? I think there's a number. I'm just not sure what it is.
What is your biggest non-negotiable?
Honesty and integrity.
Morning or night?
Morning,
but walking dogs in the dark, of course.
Weapon of choice.
Sorry.
Weapon of choice.
Weapon of choice. Not really into weapons. Pass.
It can be your phone. It can be your voice. For somebody, it was what do you call it? The little stick that they hit their kids with in the morning when they're not getting up and getting ready. Wooden spoon. Thank you. That's the big words.
Yeah, see, I just don't use weapons. I'm too
biggest
nice
fear
for that. Biggest fear. I don't have too many fears either. But I really don't like spiders or snakes.
If you weren't doing what you're doing now, what would you be doing?
I would be. What would I be doing if I wasn't doing? I love what I'm doing now. I can't even imagine doing anything else because I love what I do. But if I wasn't, it'd have to be something creative. I like creating things.
Yes. University or School of Hard Knocks?
I had both.
Yes.
And I'd go School of Hard Knocks.
What advice would you give to an 18-year-old Tanya?
What advice would I give to an 18-year-old Tanya? This is longer than 60 seconds.
I know, because you're taking a long time to answer.
That's just me all over. Okay, advice that I give to don't do anything differently. Go with your passion.
One item you could not live without? There's only one question after this.
My family.
And how many keys do you have on your key ring?
I have several key rings, and each only has about 2 or 3 keys.
It's the same as us because we don't like to have
That's right.
Well, fantastic. Thank you very much for answering the hot
Pleasure.
seat questions.
They were hard.
I know, right? Now, the last part,
It's a shameless plug.
shameless plug.
Yes.
So what would you like to talk about that's going on in your business right now that you'd like the world to know about? It can be anything at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, given our conversation today, the financial education bit is what we're just so passionate about. So we run a 12-month program which actually educates and empowers business owners to really build their business from a sustainable point of view, understanding their numbers, but we pull it all apart, put it back together, do some amazing work, and we're working specifically with real estate agents over the next 12 months. So we're really keen to sort of take this to a specific group and work with real estate agents going forward. And continue the journey and the great work we're doing.
And if somebody was interested in finding out more information, how would they do that?
And that would be through accelerateprogram.com.au, and that's with an 8.
Yes.
So
there's going to be a link there, which will have it there, and it'll be in the show notes as well. Thanks, Ara. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, Tanya, for coming onto the hot seat.
My pleasure.
Thank you for answering the hot seat questions.
Yep.
Thank you, Eva, for coming along and interviewing with me.
Pleasure.
And thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you next time on the hot seat. Thank you for listening to this episode with Tanya. And before you go, I'd ask if you enjoyed this episode that you subscribe to our podcast, which you can find if you search for The Hot Seat, wherever you listen to your podcasts, especially on Spotify and Apple. Also, I wanted to remind you that The Hot Seat is powered by Affordable Staff. And if I'm 100% honest, we could not put The Hot Seat together without outsourcing. I didn't realize it, but there's actually a lot of background work that goes into creating a podcast. And we could not have gone through all the steps, well, I couldn't anyway, without outsourcing it to an overseas team. I record the content that you're looking at right now or listening to right now, and then I send it offshore where they handle the video, the audio, the website, the podcast distribution, the marketing, the short excerpts, and so much more. So I just want to say a special thank you to our team in the Philippines. Okay, great. Thank you again for all your support, and we'll catch you in a fortnight again for The Hot Seat.